see. And we're good. Hi, it's Sir Rithkin from Montier, and I'm here with Duke Steffan from Lochac. Lochac, is that right?
Lochac, yeah.
Lochac, okay. And this is part of my interview of 50 Dukes for my quest. And I have never met Steffan, so this is a pleasure for me. And I've heard such great things about you from all the people I know down there. So I'm very excited to get to know you. So let's go ahead.
I was just saying, pleased to be here. And can I just say, big kudos to yourself for setting yourself such an auspicious challenge. And then when the world turned, finding a way to pivot that. So great idea. Love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. So
thank you. All right. So why don't we start at the beginning? When and where did you find the SCA?
Yeah, joined around 1996, 97. We got into it because some friends of mine from school went to university, and at university they started fencing on I think it was a Wednesday night, and they were having a blast doing that. And they said to a couple of us, hey, you should come and do this. So we went over and started fencing with them. So the four of us that would hang out in school started fencing together. The guy that was teaching us to fence, after a little while, said, you know, you guys seem pretty keen. You probably like this other thing that I do. And he took those first two guys at uni over to a fighter practice for the SCA. And then they called the other two of us and said, you need to come and do this. And so we went, and the four of us started playing SCA from that point on. And yeah, I mean, I was in and out a little bit at the start because of work. So I was never really kind of fully engaged at the start, but always went back to it because it was just so much fun. And and that guy that introduced us to the SCA is Duke Alaric of Bengal.
Oh,
so yeah.
Nice. And when you got introduced to the SCA, was that armored?
Yeah, so we got into it first through the fighting. And for me, I've always, coming up through school, wanted to be an actor. And after I finished high school, tried to get into uni twice to study acting and didn't get in. So I just went into work and business, and then the SCA became a place where I realised I could perform, and so I started to create theatre works for the SCA and performing at feasts and that sort of thing. And so the SCA also became my prelude to being able to become a professional actor. So it's served me and benefited me on so many fronts.
So I noticed that you got your laurel before you were knighted. Was that for performance?
Yeah, theatre production for theatre. So I would write, produce, perform, direct, right through kind of mostly Elizabethan sort of Shakespeare stuff. But to really stretch myself, I researched right back through, and we did Greek stuff, and we would take classic texts and stories from the periods, turn them into playable scripts and perform them at feasts and events and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, so many people got involved. It's not an art that you can really do by yourself.
Right.
I was very, very blessed that a lot of people got involved and came up through the ranks, and other people started to direct and produce, and it was amazing. And I'm very, very grateful to all of those people that came and played in essentially what I felt was my game. But you know, they got involved and had fun and supported it, and yeah, it was an amazing journey.
So did you like do it through a guild, or did you? Because that, I mean, it's a lot of work to get that many people together to do this.
Yeah. Our first real performance was the Comedy of Errors by William Shakespeare. The first one that we really did as a group, and we produced that in Brisbane. So I'm from Brisbane in Queensland. And our annual event is Rowanee Festival, which is in Sydney. So it's like 1,000 kilometres away. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is in miles, but a lot. And
a lot.
A lot. And so that first year, I had no idea what I was doing. I was so green, full cast, no double ups in the cast. I think it was like a cast of 22 or 24 people. And we produced it in Brisbane, took it to festival and performed it down there, and just did the one show. and it was a hoot. It was so much fun, and from that we did that a couple of years, and then someone said, yeah, we should probably perform this at home as well. It's a good idea. We should do that. So we started to do a performance in Brisbane and then at festival, and then but in between all of those big shows, creating smaller works for local feasts and that sort of thing. So no guild. There is a performers guild that was in Lochac, but hadn't really kind of gotten traction. It was really just a community for people to sort of share ideas and chat. So no, it was really kind of self-driven, self-led, and heavily supported by a lot of other people that came to play. So.
And while you were putting all this effort into performing, you were still fighting?
Yeah, still fighting. Obviously, at that point, fairly early, I'd seen the sort of structure of the SCA and understood that and decided that being a Laurel would be a cool thing. Being a Knight would be a cool thing. I'd definitely like to do both of those. So I was not kind of scared of being open about that one day I would hope to be elevated into both of those peerages at some point. It's obviously not the why. You don't do things because of that. I think that's folly, but it was definitely on my radar. But I did what I did because I loved to do it. The theatre stuff took up a lot of time, and that ended up taking a lot of my focus in the early years. So I would fight and go to training, go to events, but I wasn't really pushing the fighting anywhere near as much. I ended up just having such an amazing group of people that wanted to keep performing. So we just kept making shows, and that took the focus. And so that meant I ended up getting laureled first. And then after that, we still kept doing shows, but I sort of switched the focus a little bit more into fighting, and then really started to push down that line.
So are you a sword and shield fighter then?
Yeah, sword and board. I play with a few other things, but I'm not very good at them.
Oh, sounds like me. What kind of shield do you use?
I'm currently fighting with a strapped square and a buckler, so I fight kind of between the two. The shield that I fought with for the most amount of time through most of my fighting career was a strapped heater, and part of my journey was about trying to keep getting better and better and better. And one of the things that I knew I wasn't doing as a fighter was really finding a way to control the fight and take initiative in a fight. I became a very defensive fighter and a very static fighter. And the heater was very good for that because it, such small movements to defend legs, and was able to get around that. But I wanted to add that other element to my fighting style. And so after I won the first crown, I would, I'll backtrack a little bit. I would spend time really trying to improve one thing at a time. And so when I started to fight crowns and fight them consistently, that became a really easy benchmarking of, 6 months, do the crown tournament, come out of that crown tournament, have a think about what I thought I had done really well, what did I think I didn't do very well, and what element of my fighting did I want to focus on for the next 6 months to try and improve. And so that became a cycle because I ended up fighting quite a lot of crown tournaments. And I would come out of crown and decide, okay, this next 6 months, I'm going to focus on this part of my game. And so, that might have been footwork, it might have been line, it might have been range, whatever. But one of the things that I decided after I'd won the first crown that I really wanted to build in was just better initiative and better control in a fight, and adding sort of different line elements to the game. And I tried that with my heater, and I just felt I was constantly just falling back into my habit of being more static and more defensive. And so I thought, well, I really need to change things up. And so about a month after one of the crown tournaments, I moved to a buckler and decided this is going to change my game. And so I fought with just a buckler for the next 4.5 months. Every fighter practice, every event, win, lose or die, didn't matter. It was about actually changing my style up a bit. And so I fought just with a buckler for 4.5 months. And then towards the end of that period, leading up to the next crown, I won a local tournament just fighting with the buckler. And when I went into the next crown, I wanted something between the two, which is when I moved to the square shield. And so from that point, fought with a square and won the tournament. So
Did you won your second crown with the square?
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe you did it with a buckler, and I was going to be very, very impressed.
Oh, I know.
I think Mark is the only person I know who has ever done that. Or I guess Tim. I guess Tim and Ethelmark has done that too. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. When you decided to get serious about fighting after you got laureled, what did you change in your training?
It was a lot of it was about focus and just the decision that now was the time I was going to focus on that, and so became a little bit more dedicated to understanding what I was doing. I'm not a very analytical fighter at all. I'm quite responsive and reactive. So, you know, we've got a guy locally, Duke Gabriel, who is really quite amazing at being able to watch a fight and tell you what you did after the fight. That's not me. I don't do that. So, you know, it was about trying to understand better what I did. And I'd never really stopped and analysed what I did as a fighter. I just continued to push myself and try and get better at what I was doing. But being able to sort of pull back and start to listen to what other people said that I did and how they said I'd killed them or what I'd done wrong in a fight, to understand better what I did as a fighter so that I could then really hone in and improve those things. So a lot of it was about focus and being a little bit more sort of listening a bit more and being a little bit more analytical about that.
Did you ever use video to diagnose yourself? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I find I am quite a visual learner. I learn a lot by doing. So I've become a much better learner by reading, you know, with other sort of parts of my life. But I learn a lot by seeing. And so being able to play back video and watch what I was doing and then slow it down frame by frame. And I get a lot out of watching other fighters fight, you know, sort of watching fights on YouTube where I can slow it down and go, what did they actually just do there? And you can kind of see the little pump fake, the little twitch that drove someone to react. And yeah, so that became a big part of being able to kind of see where was my footwork and where was my line and that kind of stuff. So helps a lot.
Who were you squired to?
I had a very short squired relationship. So very early in my fighting career, I was squired, and that just didn't work out for us. So that only lasted about 2 years, and I wasn't squired again after that. So,
did you have a mentor?
I had many, yeah. We're really lucky in my local group that we've got probably one of the best crucibles of fighters in our kingdom. Rowaney would be another amazing, Rowaney and Pollitt, you know, so there's 2 or 3 kind of groups that are really solid with amazing top end fighters. And so about 1/3 of the crowns in our kingdom have come from my local group. So very blessed that, you know, I've got a lot of good fighters and generous fighters who are really willing to just train. So I fell in with a small pack of people who, you know, they themselves went on to be crowned long before I did and that sort of thing. So you know, they all got knighted and, you know, earlier than I did. And so along the way, they're getting better and better, which just pulls you up as you fight them. So very, very blessed to have a multitude of mentors, I guess, in that side of things.
So your focus, well, I guess your benchmarks were crown is what you were saying. And
that became the thing, yeah, when I started fighting crowns consistently and regularly. Before that, I would use a tournament that we held in Rowaney Festival, our big event. We'd have something called the Fighter Auction Tournament where you would be auctioned off and a member of the populace. It was a fundraising tournament. But that would get over 100 fighters, 120 fighters consistently every year. And so that in initial stages of playing, that was my benchmark of going to festival, fighting that tournament. And if I got a little bit further through or felt like I'd sort of held people out longer, even if I was out in 2, which happened a lot in the early stages, it was a good way to benchmark myself from year to year and have that measuring point. And then when I started fighting crowns regularly, that became my benchmarking point, yeah.
Did you start fighting crowns before or after you got knighted?
Oh, long before. I was fighting back when we were principality. So I'd fought principality tournaments as well. So had been playing in them for a long time. But I hit a point where I decided, you know what, I really want to try and do that. And I ended up getting to the point where I basically fought every crown tournament until I won one.
Nice. So Lochac is really big. There's a lot of mileage between groups there. How much traveling do you have to do to get seen as a fighter?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I think it's the same for all peerages because the land mass of Lochac. If you take the Crescent Isles of New Zealand and attach them to the side of the main part of Australia, the size of Lochac is the same width or slightly wider than the entire expanse of the United States.
Right.
So land mass wise, we're huge. So it's we've got 2 baronies in our local group. So we've got people on the north side of the river and we're on the south side of the river. But after that, our next nearest barony is a 8-hour drive away. So we've got some local groups around the local areas. So it's tough. You've got to do a lot locally to stay in touch, and we do rely a lot on the knowledge of locals at some point. But being able to get to festival and Rowan Festival was kind of the main place where you could kind of fight lots of different people, be seen, and be given an opportunity to really sort of kind of showcase yourself, or at least benchmark yourself against how other people in the kingdom fought, and learn different styles and see different styles and that sort of thing. So not only just for being seen, I think it's a really important part of just your development as a fighter to be able to get out there and see different ways that people approach it. We have slightly different styles in the different baronial kind of regions of our kingdom. So being able to see that and understand that obviously makes a massive difference when you're coming into something like a Crown, where people are coming from lots of different places. So it's tough. I think, if you could get to festival once a year, you would be probably okay, because we are so geographically wide, and we do rely a lot on local feedback from people about what people are doing locally, how they're going locally, how are they sitting in the ranks of the local kind of field and that sort of thing. So
did you have a vigil when you got knighted?
I did, yeah, because I didn't have one when I was laureled. I decided when I was laureled that so many people had played such a big part in me getting to that accolade. I didn't tell anyone that I was being laureled. There was about 4 people that knew outside of the Crown, and I had written a special piece for that. So we did the laureling at the event, and then I did a cake and coffee thing the next day after the feast to celebrate with everyone. But because I hadn't had a vigil for that, I thought, well, I'll get that side of it as a knight. And so I had a vigil for my knighting, which was, a little bit different. Hadn't really, I'd spoken to other knights and I knew the sort of concept of what it was, but there's so much stuff that people are telling you in those things that it just becomes a blur.
Yeah, especially if you try to stay up all night. You don't retain anything really.
I didn't do that.
I didn't anyway. That's what the book is for, right?
Yeah, totally. Should have got a book. That would have been smart.
Yeah, the book is a good thing. I like the book. Do you keep a fighting journal?
I haven't for a while. I did because I wasn't, and I'm not naturally an analytical fighter in that way. I started a live journal online, and I would come home from a fight session and jump online and document the session that I just had. And that became a really great way for me to reflect on what I had learned and experienced that night. And I found that really beneficial. I haven't done that for a while because I've just had some other focuses, and I probably should do it again because I think there is definite value in it. But yeah, I'm not a consistent documenter. It's one of those things that I kind of just move on to the next thing, and I don't stop and reflect enough. And it's something that I've learned over the last few years to really stop and do more, is to take stock of what I've done and where I've been and who we've experienced things with. And there's great value in that I really only truly started to learn in the last few years, I think.
Interesting. So the journaling is more for when you have a goal, like going for Crown, so that you can sort of track what you're working on?
Yeah, it was in the lead up. Yeah, I hit a point. I couldn't even tell you when I stopped doing it, and I think it was because I just needed something that drove me to focus on thinking about fighting differently, and that was great for me. And then when I started getting into crown tournaments consistently, I that fell away because I had a different way to focus on what I was doing. And so I couldn't even tell you when that process dropped off for me. It just became something I did less and less. But I think it's because I had moved my focus of assessing and analyzing what I was doing to a different method that was working very well for me.
So, how do you beat decision paralysis when you're trying to decide what you're going to focus on after an unsuccessful crown?
It was really about what I thought I needed to improve, what was going to give me the most gain. So, everything, you could focus on something that is going to give you, a 5% gain, or you can focus on something that if you can shift the needle enough is going to give you a 15 or 20% gain. What did I think was hindering my ability to, be in the right place at the right time? And so, my footwork wasn't bad, but I knew it could be better. And so I spent 6 months working on footwork, but specifically around the first 6 months, because I ended up something like footwork, for instance, I still wasn't happy at the next crown. So I did it again. That became a 12-month focus. And then I still wasn't really happy. So I did it again. And so actually in the midst of this somewhere, spent 18 months just focusing on my footwork about what am I stepping? Where am I stepping? How am I stepping? What's the line that I'm creating, and understanding the effects of my step in the midst of the fight and those sorts of things. And so I felt, although, it was a bit of a guess, but it was just choose, I could weigh up. I think this will give me more gain than this, but ultimately, if you're not really sure, just pick one. Just pick one and start.
So what did you do in addition to sort of concentrating on it during fight practice?
I became aware of the value of thinking about fighting more often. Duke Steffan actually is someone that, he's talked a bit about being quite visual. He would kind of play through fights in his mind and think about how he might position himself to kill a particular opponent, and talked about the way that he thinks about fighting. And that had quite an effect on me. And I sort of really started to think more about how often I thought about fighting. So it's really about the focus that I gave it. So thinking more about fighting, watching other people fight more, and actually paying attention, not just watching a fight, but trying to actually work out what they were doing, how they were moving, and that sort of thing. Again, I'm not great at analytics in that way. I can't really, well, I couldn't then. I'm much better at it now, just because you put the time in, you improve in those things. But yeah, so just the way that I focused on fighting changed a lot, because I gave it a lot more priority in the things that I was doing. So, that did mean that my performance work and my theatre work fell away quite considerably. And in fact, I'm probably a very bad Laurel in the amount of, performance and theatre work I've done in the last few years. I don't know, you could count being on the throne as theatre work, I guess.
I was going to say that you probably got some theatre work in there too.
Best gig an actor could have in the SCA, I will say. But yeah, just a real shift in how I thought and how often I thought, and the way that I thought about my fighting. And that really helped. Yeah, that again, just that reflective nature of stuff made a big difference for me. It's not something I'd ever really done before. So,
are you a believer in Pell work?
Yes.
Okay.
Despite hating it, early on, and I know you've heard that a lot. Actually, I've watched a couple of the interviews, and I hate the Pell. Yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of the Pell, and I think part of that's, I think our training and the way that we communicate the effectiveness of some parts of our training has gotten so much better over the last few years. And when I first started, you were told to hit the Pell, and you might have certain drills that you were taught to do, but kind of working out, and just like any kind of fighting training that we get given, you still have to find how it works for you. And I hadn't really found how that worked for me. And So I started to really think about, well, what were the things that I wanted to get out of a PEL session? So I started to apply similar to what I was doing with Crown 20s. What's my focus in this session? So I'm going to come to the PEL. My goal is to work on my accuracy, or my goal is to work on different lines. And so I came up with a couple of things that I'm sure aren't new, but they were new for me in the way that I used my PEL. And, you know, I created something I call 101 ways to hit one. I'm a big
101
believer.
ways to what?
101 ways to hit one.
Okay.
So my thought was, well, my belief is, and part of it stems from my work as an actor, that if I build it into my body knows it's there. And then if the moment is right, the body will just do it. You know, I have to kind of show my body that it's possible. It's much easier for me to throw a shot that's a bit weird if I have somehow built that into my body at some point. And so one of the things I was looking at was accuracy and how many different places. Do you know the 1 to 6 or 1 to 7 drill on the PEL? You know, so it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that kind of thing. So I looked at that and I went, well, how many different ways can I hit one? So I can snap it, I can wrap it. How many, you know, if you take a PEL that's standing up straight, this gives you 180 different angles on that straight snap that you could come at it from. Then there's the 180-degree angles this way, and then, you know, different line positions, different ranges, different parts of my sword. And so I started to play with, well, mixing up the range, the sword position, and the angle that I was throwing the shot at, just to see what was possible. And if that was possible, how do I generate power to land that? So it really made a massive difference for me in playing with, well, I can step in really close to the PEL and hit this shot, but I need to do it in this way to make it stick and make it land, whether that's a slight shift or, you know, clearing the space with the shoulder to let that sort of swing in, or, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, whereabouts does that land on the sword? Is it, you know, close to the bottom? Is it close to the top? Is it in the middle somewhere? And how do I do that? So that was a game that I started to play, and I started to work for myself, different angles and different lines. I'd put myself in weird physical positions and say, well, what can I do from here, just to see what would happen, and just mix it up a bit, because sometimes you overstep in a fight and you're in a really bad position. You might overstep, overbalance, all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, what do I do now? Well, you know, being able to play out of that moment is useful.
Right. So, like knowing that your hand has to be close into your body, or, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I do the same thing. Because I think a lot of people, when they do the 1 through 6 drill, they forget that it's 3-dimensional, not just the PEL, but your sword and your footwork. I mean, there's so many different facets that you can make that drill as complicated as you want, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. Because I think a lot of people just forget, and they're like, oh, I'm bored. And there's mindful practice is just so important. And that's what it sounds like to me that you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got a mate that we're training at the moment because he's keen on winning Crown. And we're having those conversations about the difference between fighting, practice, and training. And how do we differentiate that so that, you know, we're not just always getting together and fighting, which isn't then breaking down what we do or setting a goal and actually getting to the point of training, which might involve slow work drills or something else, but just finding that balance between it all so that it's not just always fighting, which essentially is practicing to fight. We're really building that stuff in. So
are your local practices set up for that, for training? Do you guys do drills?
We are probably no.
Well,
no.
I think, you know, you're in good company.
Yeah. The reality is our main fighter practice that we get together once a week and do is what I would call a practice. It's generally, most people will get in there and they'll just have the opportunity to fight as many people as they can for the night. Individual people might come to that with a specific focus that they're working on, and they might talk to other people about that and you know, get some assistance. There is the ability to do drill work there if that's what you're into. It's not something that we have structured. So there was a period where one of our accounts was coming along weekly and running a drill session. And, that sort of lasted for a period of time. And we always have pels set up, and there's always someone that's going to step out and teach the new fighters. So you'll find people kind of just naturally rotate in and around that. If they've turned up and they see someone over at the pel by themselves and they look pretty new, no one else is kind of heading, you'll see, one of the shiv will probably wander over and just help them out and spend most of their night helping those guys out. So there's not a lot of great structure around our regular fighter practice. But if you as a fighter turned up and said, I really want to do this, and made that known, someone would jump in and help you out with that and do that with you. So again, just that the generosity of the fighters in our local area is tremendous.
Okay. So let's talk about reining. What's your favorite part of reining?
The fact that you get to make moments for other people. That was the best part, the giving of awards, the recognition. You are the spectacle and you are the figurehead, but really that's just the position that allows you to create amazing moments for other people. And we really came into the job feeling that and deciding that that was the most important part for us. And it's just so amazing, just the opportunity to recognize somebody for the contribution to the game and see the effect that has on them. A lot of people feel that they go unseen, and those moments where all of a sudden they realize that someone's noticed, it makes a massive difference to them. It makes a massive, for me, the moments when I've been given an award, you're still like, oh, I didn't expect that. That's not why I did it. So that ability to care for someone in a moment, but just give them something that just is their moment in the midst of wearing a crown where everyone kind of thinks it's your moment, but it's not.
No.
Best part.
Cool. So how hard is it to rein when you have a landmass that big? Like how often are you traveling?
I'd fought quite a lot of crown tourneys before I won my first one. And we had a bit of a chat, my wife and I, and said, will this happen again? Who knows? So we went pretty hard. And the positioning of our crown tournament and investiture was very, very close to Penzic. So basically the minute we won crown and were the heirs, people were talking to us about Penzic and that kind of thing. And so we had decided that if we win a crown in that period, we would definitely come to Penzic as crown, which we did. And when we got back, we were at an event almost every weekend. I think we did something like in the first reign, maybe 18 weekends out of 26, maybe a little bit more. And then in the second reign, we did even more. We only had 3 weekends off in the second reign. Because again, we had decided that if we won it, we would do it twice and then step aside and let other people have the opportunity. And so we went, well, if we're not going to do this again, let's make the most of it. And so we'd had the money put aside to make sure that we could do that. And my wife's amazing at getting discounts. And so she's always watching things like the airlines. And so we managed to do, almost every weekend. So we were, apart from a few local events, we were flying interstate or international almost every weekend. So we went to New Zealand 3 times in the second reign. Once was for a coronation and 2 visits, one for each island, specifically to visit them as a group. But yeah, we did a lot. So it can be expensive, but you don't need to do that. The rules, and we say this to everyone, the rules only state you need to do 3 events.
Right.
So it's up to you how much you do. It is a problem because you get into the position, well, we got into the position and really wanted to make the most of it. And so I think a lot of crowns do that and have done that. And that sets a perceived sense that you have to travel a lot, but you don't. And, it's a decision that you need to make based on what you can afford and what time you have. And some people's work just won't allow it. But my work at the time allowed it, and I was able to do it. So we made the most of it, and we traveled a lot. Spent a lot of time on planes.
Was that your first time to Pennsic as king?
I have been to Pennsic twice, and I have been to Pennsic twice as king. So the second reign we won in the same period, and so we went, well, let's go back. So
nice.
It was amazing. Pennsic was incredible as a crown from Lochac. It was just tremendous, and so I definitely plan to come back, not as crown, and see what it's like, not as crown, which I think will be a little bit less kind of intense. But Pennsic was amazing.
So do you have a favorite being crowned at Pennsic story?
Oh, I've got a couple. The first, again, being from Lochac, nobody really knew who I was, and so and being a performer, I love improvisation. And so I wandered down to a Commedia dell'arte day that was being held, where we would they'd cast a show, devise the show, rehearse the show, perform the show all in a day. So I wandered down there, and I wasn't allowed to travel alone. So one of my henchmen came with me, and they're doing the rounds of oh, who are you, where you from, who are you, where you from. I said, oh, my name's Steffan, I'm king of Lochac, and they're all like, ha 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 ha. Oh, you're serious? It's like, and so I got to perform in a Commedia show as crown, which was cool fun. But probably, I mean, there's just so much for me at Pennsic that was incredible. Seeing some of these people as fighters that I'd heard about so often, and being able to fight them and meet them. I met some of so many amazing people. But probably the most immersive experience I've ever had in the SCA was going down and vying for Anglesey to fight on our war side one night, and amazing, just such an amazing moment. Cool. Just incredible, just there's photos of us processing in, and just the dim candlelight, the enclosure inside this glade of trees, there's just this openness, but you can't see anything beyond the trees but flickering firelight and hearing the noise of everybody else, and then there's this moment, and it's just so good. Yeah, that was fun, and but so many more.
Super cool. That's cool. So do you have on tourney day, do you have a tourney routine?
Yeah, I developed one over the time. I'm not super analytical, but I do like to watch the fights because I just feel like it gets me into the zone of the tournament. Massive thing for me is staying relaxed. I know one of my early crowns leading into it, I was by myself in Tasmania for this tournament, and there was an expectation that I was going to do okay. I don't think there was any expectation I was going to win, but at that point I'd been getting, kind of mid-realm of the tournament, sort of into the mid-ranks. But I just felt so tense before the tournament, and I'd said to myself, I need to laugh out loud. But I was by myself, and I was super embarrassed, and so I didn't do it, and I went into the tournament super tense, and it was out in 2. And at that point I went, I am never doing that again. And I fight so much better when I'm relaxed and when I'm just having a good time. And so I like to find a spot to sit. I find a chair, I find a location, that becomes my spot. I will generally always have someone with me, or my wife wouldn't travel to crowns with me. She doesn't like watching them. She gets too tense and too antsy about it. And even when we were crowned, she was like, we got to oversee this tournament. So I for a long time traveled by myself. Excuse me. And we had some friends. We were in a big household many years ago that kind of fell apart. And a couple of our friends, the guy that we're actually training now, who's keen to win, they kind of sort of stopped playing SCA for a while. And but we'd still catch up for breakfast and that sort of thing. And he heard that I was traveling to crowns by myself. And he went, that's not right. You should not travel to crown by yourself. I'll come with you. And so he started traveling to crowns with me as my support, because he knew Bron didn't want to go. And so he would basically make sure I had water, a snack. He'd take my shield and, make sure everything was there, and just be there to support me, which was amazing. So having that spot, and then if he wasn't there, somebody else would just step up and say, do you want me to do this? I'm like, sure, thanks. But so find a spot for me, watch the tourney, be able to see the fights. I don't try and dig too much into what people are doing, because I find that gets me too much into an analytical mode and not in the moment. So I just sort of watch and take it in, just to be in the feel and the zone of the tourney. Just make sure I've got water and stuff handy. But I'm not afraid to have a laugh and have a chat, and just, for me, it's about staying relaxed and feeling like I'm loose, which is important for me when I fight.
Do you have some sort of ritual you do before the lay-on when you're in the fighting field to make sure that you're relaxed and focused?
Laugh.
You laugh. Okay.
Yeah. I make sure that, like coming up to the second crown that I won, my friend that was traveling with me, Yento, he and I had a chat the night before, and I said, now make sure, like he knew at that point. So he actually said to me, so you need to watch this video. And it was this crazy cat video on YouTube of running into some plastic Glad wrap, and it was hilarious. It just made me laugh. And I mean, I'm not a big cat fan, but that was hilarious. And so he said, I'll say that tomorrow if you need to relax, Glad wrap cat. And so right before the final, he just looked at me and went, Glad wrap cat. And I lost it. I laughed so hard, and you know, it took away any kind of feeling of tension and stuff. So yeah, so just being able to breathe is important. Breath is obviously connected to everything we do, and so that exhalation of breath through a laugh, it's like a sigh of relief that actually it helps relieve tension. And so that sense of just being connected to my breath and breathing out, laughing out loud, and just breaking that ice, I've been told is somewhat disconcerting to my opponents as well. When I wear a closed face helm, so you can just sort of see the eye slits, and so just hearing this giggle come out of, you know, this closed face helm apparently is a little bit disconcerting at times, but it helps me, so I don't mind it.
Do you have a goal right now in the SCA that you haven't met yet that you're working toward?
Yeah, look, I think it's constantly just about becoming better at what I am and who I am and what I do. I took a little bit of time off after our second crown because I'm, you know, got a bit of a side hustle I'm trying to build up on the side. And so I played some focus on that. And so that kind of stopped me doing as much as I would like to do. But my focus is always just about continually being a better fighter and how can I make great moments for other people. So I'd like to get back into doing a bit of performance stuff, but it's about balancing time and what I can do. So right now, our focus is about helping our friend try and, you know, lift his martial skills to the point where he is contending in crowns at a rate that he wants. That's probably the biggest focus at the moment. Is you know, he supported me for so many years, and he went, I think I'd like to do that. I'm like, all right, let's go. So that's the main focus at the moment, is working with him.
And this is the same guy that traveled with you?
Yeah, he was called my tawny wife. So now I'm his tawny wife.
Nice. So how is it different training someone else than training yourself?
Yeah, really different for me because I'm always cautious about telling somebody how it should be done. So you know, the language that I use is very much about, this is how I do it. This is what I saw. This is what I think. This is what I felt, to give them the impression. So when we talk about our fights, you know, I'll talk to him more about the fact that he moved to a certain position which didn't feel like he threatened me. Perhaps the line was wrong. I felt this, and so I've tried to train people as much as I can. I mean, I've always been, it's one part of my game that I've always been very cautious of. I just feel like it was one of the things that held me up winning crown for so long, I think, in that first point too. I was scared to be seen as the benchmark and seen to be scared as the guy. And that mentally kind of held me up for a long time, being able to win. And I still feel the same about training. I'm obviously, you know, much better at just pushing past that now because it's about helping them. So, yeah, that internal focus of I know how to communicate with me, I guess is the thing. So really trying to find out, well, how does this person hear? What's their best learning style? How do I talk to them in a way that's going to resonate with them? That's the tough part, is trying to work that out. Because I might say something. I mean, I think we've probably all experienced that moment where somebody says something and you go, oh, yeah, right, of course. And somebody's like, I've been telling you that for 5 years, but they haven't told you that in a way that worked for you. So trying to find those ways that work for that person, I think, is the toughest part.
How did you get over yourself not wanting to be the benchmark? Because I get that,
Yeah, I don't, just the decisioning part, it was the decision that I got fed up coming second. I came second 5 times before I actually won my first crown. And I'd never won the first fight of a final. And I went into the first one that I won, I went into it and I was like, right, I have to win the first fight. That's going to be the game changer. And I lost the first fight.
Oh.
I went, that cannot happen again. So, I managed to take out the next 2 fights, which was great. But so much of it, I think, was just the way that I had positioned myself. Because I'd spent so much time trying to learn more and continually improve my game, I was constantly coming into things as the student. And I had to shove that away. And one of the things that I learned as an actor is to be able to walk on stage and have all of the training in the background supporting you, but being able to just not think about any of it, just be in the moment, because the training would do its job. And I had to apply that same thinking to my fighting. I have spent years fighting and training and learning. This was my moment on stage. And it was actually a conversation with some friends of ours at our Rowaney Festival after I'd come second in the last 20 again. And they pulled me aside and they said, we just want to say this to you in a way that we think might resonate with you. It's like you're walking into the final wanting to do a duologue, but it's actually got to be a monologue. You are the star of that show. They are your support actor. Stop trying to do a 2-person scene. I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about it. But it was right. I hadn't really kind of ticked over to the point where I had decided that the job in that moment was to kill my opponent. I love having great fight moments, and some of those fights were amazing fights. And I would get caught up in that moment of this amazing fight that we're having together and forget that I was actually meant to kill them. That wasn't my focus. And so I had to shift into that mindset of going, yes, I can still have those amazing moments. Yes, I can still have incredible fights. But ultimately, right now, the job is to kill my opponent. That's my job. That's got to be over and above everything else. That's the job. And that's kind of what switched for me in that first final that I won, where I got killed in the first fight, and I went, I got to kill this guy. I got to kill this guy. And it just changed my whole approach to the fight, and thankfully, played in my favor. So
that's a really cool way to put it. I've never thought about it that way. So
yeah, and it's something for me that I say a lot now is our integrity is number one. Like every time, first and foremost, I will take a shot and walk away. I will not have doubt. It's for me going into crowns. That was the most important thing as a fighter, was that at the end of those fights, there could be no doubt. I had refought fights because there was some hesitation on my opponent's side. I would offer to refight some fights if there was any kind of hesitation. If they said no, then I was like, okay, cool. As long as you're cool with it, that's fine. I did not want to get to the end of a crown tournament with there being one shred of doubt that every single fight that I fought was clean. That was the most important thing for me. Because, my integrity as a fighter, my integrity as a peer, the integrity of my consort, all of those things, over and above everything, is super important. I don't want to disgrace my wife by being the guy on the field that didn't take the shot. So that was the most important part. After that, it's a job. My job is to kill you as fast as I can and use the tools that I have in my tool bag to the best of my ability. And I just hadn't kind of clicked that bit over.
Cool. All right. Well, let's look at your tools. Why don't we look at your sword?
I have it here.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Let me I did this earlier, but I've forgotten. Oh, 30. I know what it is. I know. I measured it in inches for you.
Oh,
So standard bit of repair.
thank you.
Just circular, not shaved at all on the sword itself. Thrusting tip, which I make out of rolled foam. I've tried some of those commercially bought rubber ones, and I just rip them to shreds. I don't know what it is. So I make mine. They cost me, maybe 50 cents each. It's literally just a strip of foam that I roll up and then tape and attach it to the top.
Is that tool dip over it?
Sorry?
Is that tool dip over it?
That's just electrical tape, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I tape the sword by itself first and make sure that the end is covered, because if the thrusting tip rips off mid-fight, I want my sword to still be legal.
Right.
So I tape it first, then I make the thrusting tip and I attach that. And so I run some fiber tape over the top of that loosely because I don't want to compress the foam. I make it a little bit fatter than the sword so that around the join, I can really compress that fiber tape onto the sword so that it really compresses that in. And it does make it generally just a slight bit of bulbous at the top end. Not much, just a couple of millimeters, but that's just so that I can really, make sure it's going to stick on the sword. And once that's on there, I just cover it loosely with a bit of electrical tape. If I need to, if it doesn't have the progressive return, I'll punch a few holes in it just so that the air can get back into it, just with a
good idea.
Spike or something, just so that the air can get in and it compresses. So standard bit of 1.25 rattan. The thing that I do though is I really shape the hilts on my swords quite heavily. Basically I shape it into a sort of wide dip, and I try and make it flat. It's sort of an oval shape rather than circular, because I like the way that sits in my hand more. So I shave it down. I've got a linishing belt that I use for that. So I'll put my hand on the sword and I'll draw around it with a Nico pen, like a Sharpie, so I can get the hand position and then just dig into it with the linishing belt and then just refine that out. And I'm constantly playing with it so that I can essentially have my hand loosely closed around the sword hilt so that I can hold it with zero tension in my hand, or the minimum amount of tension in my hand. I generally use that sort of knuckle to knuckle there as the main point. So some of those points become quite narrow compared to the rest of the sword because it gives me that space. And so some of the benefits that I find of that is it fits in the hand beautifully. It gives me very good control on my sword. I know exactly which line my sword is on because I can feel that rectangular sort of oval shape in the palm of my hand. So I know, depending on where my hand sits, whether my edge is on. So I never have to think about where my edge is on. If it feels wrong, I'll just call it flat because I'll know it's not on line because of that feeling in my hand. And I find that just gives me better control because of the oval shape. So if I turn or spin my wrist or cock my wrist for an offside, that's just all prepped in there with it. And the benefit that I've found with the extra divots up and down is that I've got this pinky control. So just sitting flat here, I can squeeze my pinky and it gives it that kind of good range of like face flick type stuff. That without any kind of cue, I can just squeeze the hand and the sword flicks forward really, really fast into my opponent's face. So, and with other shots, it plays in that as well.
And you have a lanyard, not a trigger.
Yeah, so I have the lanyard attached at the front, and that goes over the wrist divot in my half gauntlet. So it sits in there. I've seen the triggers. I haven't really ever played with them. I was early times very scared that it might spin and rip my finger, break my finger. So I've never really tried it. But because of the way that I shape my hilts, they're quite shaped to my hand. I don't think that the trigger would work in there. It's just going to be something that gets in my way, and I'm going to feel like I don't have proper grip on my sword. So yeah, that works for me. It sits over the top of my hand so it doesn't get caught up in the shots and that sort of thing.
And that's plastic hilt. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So I end all these interviews with the same 10 questions. So you ready? Okay.
I think so.
If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
Yes, I was thinking about this. It's tough. I think I would go back and fight some of those legends from my early days that I never got to fight, like the Fabians and the Jades. I just, they came to Lochac and I saw them fight, but back then I had no idea what they were doing. So yeah, probably those guys.
Okay. Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom? I think I know the answer. Yeah.
Let's go.
If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
Oh, there's a few, but I think I would get a lot out of Duke Mark of Arundel.
He really understands.
Yeah. His understanding is so good.
Yeah, he's so nice. Like, you want something to hate about him, but there's nothing to hate. Like, I don't know. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Knight's Tale. I like to be entertained.
Yeah. If you could add a rule to the rules of the list, what would it be?
Oh. To accept that archery is a thing and get over it. And we have different archery here. Our guys are very different, but yeah.
You still have the same issues though, right?
Look, some people don't like that it can change the fight. I'm like, that's part of fighting, buddy. Get over it.
Right. All right. What is your favorite tournament format?
Probably round robin. I like the fact that you get a chance to fight everyone. I think it's a tournament format that gives everyone a chance to get a lot of good fights. It is an opportunity to, sort of fight different people at different levels. So, yeah.
What is your favorite event?
Favorite international event, Pennsic, because it's the only one I've been to, and that was just so mind-blowing, and I learned so much being there. Other than that, I would have to say Crown 20s. I just love the spectacle that they bring. I love the pageantry, and I love what it brings out in people when they're done right. So
cool. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
I've actually been chatting for a couple of years with Duke Felix in Inelgard. He's an armorer and an amazing one. It's a late period. It's actually a jousting helm. So I wear a shovel nose faceplate at the moment. And the one that I've seen is a similar sort of style, but it's this super corrugated front and it's just dead sexy. It's going to be horrible for things sticking to it, but it will look amazing.
You don't get claustrophobic in there?
No. I started with an open-faced helm back in the day, and then I was given a sallet to wear, and I just kind of got used to it, and I quite like it. So I moved from a sallet. When the sallet died, I ended up moving into this shovel nose face, and yeah, I think you get good at what you get used to.
Right. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to change this one for you because you haven't been to a It's Saturday morning at Pennsic, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
I found somebody who knows how to have fun, and I got them to take me around and help me have fun. Yeah.
All right. Who is your favorite fight ever?
Oh, man. So many. Am I allowed to list more than one?
Yeah, definitely.
Duke Steffan of Beckenham at Pennsic, had an amazing session with him. Probably one of the best fight sessions I had was with Duke Sheridan at our Rowaney Festival, where we just went hard at each other it was at our Great Northern War up here, actually. But 20, 30 minutes, just him and I just bashing it out, and it was just the best fun. So much fun. So it's, and there's way more than that, but all for different reasons.
Okay, and then the bonus question is, who is the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
Gosh, that is a hard pick because there's been a lot of work being done to make that the thing. I can't fault Duke Felix, but there's so many. we've had a real push of making sure that our fights are clean, particularly in crown tournaments, because nobody wants that. Nobody wants it to end that way. So I got to sing a bit of praise to the crowns that have been in the last sort of at least 6-7 years that have been really pushing that process, and that, like, crowns that have asked for fights to be refought just because they felt like there was too much to question for anybody watching. Just let's make it clean, and it's no disrespect to anyone, but let's redo that just because it just didn't look great, guys. You're better than that. So yeah, tough one to pick one. I think we're building an excellent reputation for it across the kingdom.
What a great cultural thing you guys are doing down there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's taking away the shame of losing, I think, which is an important part. We only get better by losing, by learning that way. Sometimes, there is no shame in losing a fight. It's better to lose a fight and walk away with your integrity intact, or knowing that you fought your best and be good with that. I think that's an important part of the game.
Agreed. Well, thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully maybe I'll get down there sometime and I'll get to fight you.
Come on down. You're always welcome.
Well, thanks everyone. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.